everyone, this is Ashley. If you're new here, thank you for joining. If you are not new here and you've been here before, thank you for coming back. Today's video is a serious one. It's probably going to be a little all over the place. I'm really just going to speak from experience in my heart, and I don't have a script or anything planned for how I'm going to talk about today's topic. So I'm just hoping to talk to you guys like I would have a face-to-face conversation with somebody. So that being said, what we're talking about today is something that I feel is very important, and that is endometriosis. So if you don't know me or you don't know anything about me, I actually suffer from stage 4 endometriosis, which is the worst possible case that it can reach. And I wanted to talk about this today. I just had an overwhelming feeling to discuss it and be open about it, because with social media, especially with COVID and a lot of people using social media more, I'm seeing a lot more women struggling to get pregnant, struggling with their in vitro, struggling with fertility medication, spending thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars really, and not getting the outcome that they want. So while this video is not for anyone to diagnose themselves, I'm hoping that the information that I give and the experiences that I'm going to talk about provide enough for you to be able to reach out to your doctor and ask questions if you think that this might sound like yourself. I'm also going to apologize for the noise. I hope you guys can't hear it, but we do have some tractors and stuff going on around our house because we have cornfields around, and they're a little bit loud. So I'm hoping it's not too distracting, but if it is, I apologize. So where we will start is my story. I got pregnant with Kinley, my daughter, when I was 16, and I got pregnant no problem. I was not planning to get pregnant. I was not trying to get pregnant. So at that point, I had no idea that anything was wrong. Leading up to getting pregnant with her, I did not get my first period until I was 14 and a half. And they were always heavy. They always made my lower back hurt, kind of down into my thighs a little bit. And I just kind of assumed that that was normal. It wasn't really something that we knew anything about. I told my mom that they were heavy and painful, but from what I understood and what she understood, that was just normal. So got pregnant with Kinley, had her, and I gave birth to her in 2010. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit to 2012. I was working at a local department store here in town. I was single. I wasn't doing anything that would have led to me getting pregnant at that point, and I started missing periods. And when I say missing periods, I don't mean I missed one or two. I mean I was going months without any sign of a period. I knew I wasn't pregnant, and there was actually another girl who sadly passed away from my hometown, and she had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Cancer runs in my family. Every person that I can think of before my mom, so my grandparents, their grandparents, my dad, just there's a lot of different forms of cancer in our family. So me missing periods and then having the pain that I was having, which I'm going to get into in a second, really kind of made me nervous that maybe I had ovarian cancer or something similar. So I was working at this department store, like I said, and I folded the jean walls a lot, which meant I was sitting on the floor. So that's really not too bad. But there started becoming a time, probably around July, where I would go to get up off the floor from folding the jeans and just couldn't get up because the abdominal pain was so terrible. It felt like someone was taking a screwdriver and just twisting it inside my body. Sudden movements, moving certain ways led to sharp pain. I had pretty much at this point convinced myself that there was a tumor growing inside of me. So I went to a specialist here in town, and they did a CT scan to start out after confirming I was not pregnant. And when that came back, she was worried. I had no prior problems, so that's why this doctor was so worried. And there was just a lot of masses in my ovaries. So at that point, I was even more scared of what my outcome could have ended up being. So due to the amount of mass that was in there, she did go ahead and complete my first laparoscopy. So we are in August of 2012 at this point. I had my first laparoscopy, and afterwards they go over the pictures that they take while they're in there doing the surgery. They go over what could have caused it. So originally, after she got into my reproductive system for the surgery, she thought maybe I had contracted a sexually transmitted disease, but those came back negative, so it wasn't that. But she said that there was a lot of scar tissue just surrounding my reproductive organs, you know, around my ovaries, around my uterus, around my fallopian tubes, and just kind of chalked it up at the time to Kinley rearranging my furniture, because I was so young when I got pregnant and had her, and I wasn't fully developed yet. So I took that, you know, cancer and stuff wasn't a concern at that point. But from there, I was told to try a low dose birth control to see if that would help. I did that. It didn't help. She tried me on probably 4 different ones, and they just made me feel terrible. So I stopped taking them. And then from there, a couple years later, I was in a relationship where I felt like I would maybe want to have another baby. Kinley was about 4 or 5 at this point, and I just could not get pregnant. If I got even close to getting pregnant, you know, the tests would be positive for a week, and then within a matter of 2 days, they would go from being positive to no longer being positive when I would take new ones. So at that point, I knew something else was wrong. I didn't know if it was something with me or if it was something with that person, or if I just wasn't doing things on the right time. I wasn't, at this point, I wasn't tracking ovulation, temping, anything like that. So if you are trying to conceive, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As far as trying, I was not doing all of that. I was just being active and kind of waiting for the day where my tests would be positive and stay positive. So in 2016, I found out I was pregnant. I was very surprised to find out I was pregnant. We were not avoiding, but again, not trying by trying to conceive standards. I didn't have any symptoms. I felt fine. I felt great. My tests started out kind of light, and then within 3 days they were very dark. But I only took the test because my back hurt so bad that I thought I had a kidney infection. So I took the first test to kind of rule that out, because I was planning to go to the ER and try to figure out why I was in the pain that I was in, and that test showed up positive. So from there, I bought more. They continued to be positive, but within 2 days of taking the first test, I started bleeding heavily, randomly. It was not time for my period. It was almost black colored blood. It was bad. And I had an appointment with my OB, a different OB, the next morning. So I figured I would bring it up then. You know, nothing at that point had been confirmed that there was anything terribly wrong. When there's blood like that, you do need to prepare yourself for the idea that something is wrong. It just was new to me, and I didn't really know what to expect. So I took a clear blue the morning of my appointment, and it was super, super dark. So I was pretty reassured. The bleeding had stopped. It only lasted the night before. And And they did my blood draw at my appointment to check the amount of HCG in my body, which is the number that tells you basically if it's progressing, and if it is progressing, you know, where are you in time frame in that pregnancy. So when I was at my appointment and they were doing the blood draw, I did tell the OB that I had really bad back pain, kind of dizzy, and about the bleeding that I had. And he didn't seem concerned. So if an OB is not concerned, why should I be concerned, right? So we went to a bonfire, either that night or the night after, and everything was fine. I was sitting there. I hadn't told anyone that I was pregnant yet because there were a few other people there who had gone through losses. And I just really, I didn't want to make it about me, or, hey, I'm pregnant. I know you lost a baby, but I'm pregnant now. That's just not something that I would have wanted to make someone else feel. So I got up to go to the bathroom just simply to pee. And when I went to get off the toilet, that pain of twisting and stabbing was back, and I could hardly stand up to get up. So I went and got my fiance at the time, and we were only about 5 minutes away from one of the hospitals in town. I got in the driver's seat to try to drive. I was in such bad pain I could not sit still. So he drove, I rode in the passenger side. We had a friend of mine keep Kinley for a little bit while I was there, and then she ended up going with my mom. So I get to the ER and tell them, you know, hey, I have a confirmed pregnancy. They're testing my blood work. I'm supposed to find out if it's gone up anymore since the last one. You know, next week I should find out. But this is what's going on. And I mean, it's on my right side. I can't sit still. I am curling up in a ball. I'm trying to stretch. I'm just fidgeting because the pain was unbearable. The longer I sat still, the worse it got. So quickly they got me into an ultrasound. If you have ever been pregnant, you know, before a certain amount of weeks, they will do a vaginal ultrasound, which is what they did with me. That was one of the worst pains of my life. And they can't tell you anything when they're doing that. You have to wait for the doctor on call to review it and talk to you about it in your room. So about an hour went by probably, and the doctor on call, who is now my OB, came into my room and told me that they could not find the sac or anything that should have been there in my uterus where it should have been. So at that point I was presented two options. One option was go home, see if you feel better. Option two was if you do go home and it doesn't get better, you have this much amount of time to get back here or we're risking your life. So it was, if you feel like it can't get worse, do not go home. So I talked with my mom and my fiance at the time about it. And as badly as I wanted to go home and hope that everything was okay, the fact is I had a little girl at that point who needed her mom, and we decided to stay. They did a little bit more looking around and scheduled me for another laparoscopy the next morning for an emergency one, and found out that I had an ectopic pregnancy in my right fallopian tube. And not only had it implanted there, but when it implanted there, it would have been a healthy baby otherwise. But it was still growing, and it actually burst my tube open. So the blood that I had days prior was the start of internal bleeding. So I almost lost my life. At this point, I was not diagnosed with endometriosis yet. So from 2012 to 2016, there was no diagnosis. So she did my surgery, got me cleaned out. This tube has now been shut down in a way. I think that they like kind of burn it off, or something like that. The terminology and everything is not something I'm great at. And it was all kind of a blur. This all happened within 24 hours. So I went back for a follow-up with this doctor, and she told me at that point, in July 2017, that I had stage 4 endometriosis. She did not feel the need to open me up and look around again because she already knew what my insides looked like, and that my chances of having another baby were slim to none. And I don't say that wanting to scare any of you. You can catch endometriosis in the early stages, and while you can't cure it necessarily, there are things you can do to keep it at bay before it kind of takes over your entire reproductive system with scar tissue. And another thing is, it does not have to just grow around your reproductive organs. I have friends that have it in other places, bowels, intestines. It's a growth of scar tissue, and it's inflammatory, it's uncomfortable. But I don't want any of you watching this who have endometriosis or think that you might to assume that this would be your outcome as well. Mine just happened to be missed really long. So I've now, at this point, I just had another laparoscopy June of 2020, so not quite a year ago yet. And that was kind of mine and my husband's last attempt to clear me out, to try to get pregnant. As you guys know, if you're not new here, I have Kinley, he has Liam, so we would like an us baby. These two are certainly enough for us, but I do think it would be really awesome to experience a pregnancy with my husband. My pregnancy with Kinley was great, but with her father, it was not. I spent a lot of time looking for him, trying to find out if he was cheating, which he was. I just didn't get to enjoy being pregnant, and it wasn't just because of him, but because of my age. It was kind of uncommon still at that point. It was looked down upon, so I didn't get to do a gender reveal. I didn't get to announce in a special cute way. I spent a lot of it ashamed. So those are just some of the reasons that we would like to have another baby, but I love kids anyway. So that's 3 surgeries I've had since 2012. And I get asked so much by other people, from around my town, or people who know of me, but are maybe a little bit further away, kind of what the symptoms were. So really for me, it was the heavy periods. When I say heavy, I mean like a tampon every hour heavy, super tampons at that. So that, the pain where I'm at now with the endometriosis is, it will start in my lower back, right? If you have back dimples, that's kind of about where it starts. I have them, so that's just how I describe where the pain is. It'll start there, and then within a couple days, it'll start to kind of get into my hips, and then it'll get into my thighs, my joints. It gets up into my arms now, which did not used to happen. And the scar tissue grows back. So that's the really unfortunate thing about these surgeries, is it's not a guaranteed fix. Sometimes it can work. Other times it's just a maintenance process to keep you cleared out. So where this comes into play with in vitro, for those who have been asking me, is I strongly feel if you are going to spend the money to do in vitro, please get an exploratory surgery done. I'm not saying that because I want you to have endometriosis, but I feel like it has got to be heartbreaking to spend $20,000 to $30,000 for one cycle, and that egg not be able to implant, or not implant properly, because you don't know what your insides look like. And the only way that you can diagnose endometriosis is to get a look at those insides. So it can prevent a lot of things from happening if you don't know that it's there. So that's why I feel so strong about it. That's why I'm urging people to go get checked out if they have any symptoms like that. Really heavy periods are not super normal. the pain with them is not normal. Cramping is normal, but excruciating, I can't get out of bed pain is not what it should be like. And then on top of that, you know, there's breakouts, bloating is terrible with endometriosis. I don't even think that I ever had a period in my life where I didn't have endometriosis. I think it laid idle for years and just suddenly popped up. And that being said, I feel that it needs to be talked about because it's not talked about enough. I just went through this with Kinley's doctors because they thought she had colitis or Crohn's, and then they did a biopsy on her, which is negative, by the way, because she has a ton of inflammation showing in her stomach. Within 2 weeks, it got worse. And it happens around the same time where I'm having problems, and we live together, so obviously we synced our cycles. So it's just one of those things where I feel like the more information and the more people talk about it, the better we can maybe help other women who are struggling or feel like they might be struggling. It is not the end of the world. I felt like it was when I got diagnosed. I came home and I cried, and I felt like a failure as a woman because I can't possibly do the one thing that I'm supposed to be able to do. I did it once, why can't I do it again? But it's not the end of the world. There are options, but it starts with making sure that you're getting the care that you need and able to check that box of, yes, I have it. No, I do not have it. So I hope that was helpful. I kind of went all over the place. Like I said, I probably would. Any more questions, you guys are absolutely welcome to ask in the comments. If you know me personally, hit my number up. I just think it's important to educate women on our bodies.